there is an issue that I've had and that I've spoken to a lot of people about that I seem to get this impression of, okay? Is that a lot of OSU players seem to be mistaken about how the PP system works, and they seem to have like a different idea of what the PP system should do. Essentially, right now at least, the point of the PP system is to be as accurate as possible at determining the skill required to set a play, and then rewarding you PP based on that. However, it's not always the case that these values are accepted by the community. So for example, there's a lot of times where there will be some, let's say, 11-star map, but it's like 30 seconds long. 30-second long 11-star map. And anything that is 11 stars, regardless of your point of view on anything of OSU, of difficulty, 11 stars is always going to be an indicator of a map being really, really hard. There's only like 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 tops people in the entire world who are capable of FCing 11-star maps. It's realistic to assume that these 11-star maps should be highest value PP recordable maps, right? But the problem is that when it's only 30 seconds, as a viewer and as a OSU player in general who's just observing, it's not as exciting to watch somebody grind a 30-second map by retrying over and over again and like getting it the highest PP play of all time or whatever. And so what people gravitate towards is wanting the PP record to be a longer map. They'll say, I want a PP record, let's say 3 to 5 minute instead of 11 stars. Actually, no, let's just say it's 11 stars. The same SR, 11-star map. Regardless of what is overweighted or not, people want there to be a 3 to 5 minutes longer map because as a viewer, it's more exciting to like watch a full play that's a few minutes long and be like, you know, get nerves while playing it, be shaking near the end, and then if they miss once, it's over, okay? It's no longer worth as much. Essentially, because of this view, there's also the mistaken idea that right now in the meta, since most high PP plays are very short, that these are actually relatively overweighted compared to the 3 to 5 star minute maps. As in, if you have maps of similar difficulty, but one of them is long and one of them is short, a lot of people assume that the higher length ones are actually underweighted compared to the shorter ones. The reality is, it isn't actually the case. Right now, as it stands, short maps have been nerfed like 2 or 3 times during just my span in OSU, and when it comes to being the same SR, short maps are almost always less PP than long maps. I have a couple examples that I prepared. I have a top level example and one that's more of a mid-level example from my own top plays. So for example, if you go to Time to Say Goodbye, very well-renowned, very short farm map, and then you compare it to Rule, very well-renowned but long PP map. These are both basically the same skill set, very high BPM, comfortable aim. However, one is like 30 seconds of drain time, the other is like 3 minutes. And to be fair, let's compare diffs that are relatively similar in terms of both star rating and difficulty settings, just to make sure that there isn't like some external factor determining the PP value of each of them. This is 7.03 stars. Let's go to Pika's Extreme. It is 7.05 stars. It's the closest diff in terms of star rating to this full size. The Rule, DT only, 1692, plus hidden, it's like 1775. That's a lot of PP. If you go to Pika's Extreme, which is about the same SR, but DT, it's 1462. With hidden, it's 1533. So the only real difference in terms of like the maps is just the length. The only difference is that one of them is 30 seconds and the other one is like a full size, despite the fact that both of them have the same star rating and they both have the same amount of time that is like actually hard. As in, Rule is mostly very easy, and then there's just a few diff spikes that like buff up the star rating to 7.03 stars. And that is enough to make like a 200 to 250 PP difference, right? And we can even go a little bit higher. If we say, oh, but the Pika diff is like CS 3.4, this one's like CS 4, it's not an accurate comparison. Let's go a little bit higher then. Pookie's Extreme is now CS 3.8. It's almost the exact same diff settings, and it's even higher SR. On this diff, you put HDT, and it's still about 200 PP less than Rule, despite the fact that, again, these are very similar in skill set. This one is higher SR, and the amount of like difficult parts in each map is about the same. It's about the same amount of drain time, right? So you can clearly see, in terms of the same SR, short maps are not overweighted. They are like relatively nerfed compared to longer maps because of the consistency factor. It's more time efficient to retry short maps than to retry long maps. So you can like, let's say you can re-roll your RNG over and over again to make it so that your chances of FCing or getting a good score on the short map is higher, right? The only issue that people have is more so when the shorter map is a lot higher SR. So for example, if you go to the top diff on Time to Say Goodbye, which is like 0.6 stars higher, it's actually the same diff settings, actually a little bit buffed. On this diff, you put HDDT, and it is finally higher than on Rule. Although to be fair, this map mechanically is a lot harder than Rule, like a lot harder. You can even see it in the leaderboards where you put hidden DT and top scores. A lot of these plays, there's like a couple that are 1.5k, and then a lot of them are 1.2, 1.1, 1.3, 1.2, 1.1, another one that's 1.5k. If you go on rule instead, you go HD, DT, and again, it's 1.3k, 1.1k, 1.3k, 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 1.1k. The PP values are relatively the same, but people enjoy watching this map more than this map simply because of the fact that this one is shorter and this one is longer, and it feels more hype to look at a longer map. But in terms of PP values, there isn't some grand conspiracy to make sure that short maps are like super overweighted. It's just that people prefer gambling over and over on short maps. That's it. This idea that short maps are inherently overweighted compared to longer maps is not true. It's just that more people are willing to retry spam short maps rather than retry spam long maps, even if the long maps are like objectively easier for the same or larger amount of PP. There's actually another example I want to show, not just of time to say goodbye, but on a lower level, because you might say, oh, but these are both like super overweighted aim slop sets, and like their PP value shouldn't be taken for granted since like they're gonna get nerfed anyways, right? So how about we take two different sets of lower levels, about 500 PP to 600 PP level, and compare them together. And I got this example. So you have Cold Green Eyes. It is a 3-minute 40 drain time set, 5.28 stars with these diff settings. And you have Togenkyo Alien, all right? TV size, it's 1 minute 30, the exact same diff settings, and it's almost the exact same SR. By 0.04, it's off. It's slightly lower CS, but the spacing is higher, so it like compensates for each other. But if you just look at the SS values, this one is worth 636.73, and this one is worth 551.95. So there's a big difference there. It's an 80 PP difference. In terms of like scaling based on the amount of PP, that's like a, what, 15, 20? No, it's about 15% difference in PP. The only real difference in how these maps play is that this one is longer and has a lot more like filler, very easy sections. In terms of gameplay, they're both very comfortable maps that have either one diff spike on this map or a few diff spikes on this one. But these are lower diff spikes. So I would actually consider this map to be mechanically a lot easier, at least for me to play, compared to this map. But this one is worth a lot more. There's an inbuilt length bonus in the game. And there's also an inverse like TV size / ringtone size nerf. People had this idea that these 30-second long 11-star maps are that they're more PP, or they're the same PP as a 3 to 5 minute 11-star maps. This is not true, however. These maps are always going to be higher PP, or almost always going to be higher PP for the same skill set as the 30-second long maps. The difference that people actually complain about is that the 3 to 5 minute, let's say 10-star maps are less PP or the same amount of PP as the 30-second long 11-star maps. And they still feel like, regardless of it being less mechanically difficult, they would prefer the PP record to be 3 to 5 minutes of 10 stars, right? There is a buff to the like long maps, which is the fact that because they're easier, fundamentally, it is going to be harder to miss. Even if you're shit missing, it is going to be harder to miss on the long maps. So for example, I'm a high 4-digit player. Most of my top plays are mid to high 7-star, a couple 8 stars here and there. If I were to play like, let's say a 5 or 6 star generic map of my skill set, so let's say comfortable, farmable, DT jumps, or even like no mod jumps at 5 to 6 stars, I could reliably FC any map of that skill set that you send me. Even if it's like 5 minutes or 30 seconds, doesn't matter. I would reliably be able to FC it and not really shit miss that much because it's so much below my like general skill level at the moment. And so wrapping it all up, we end up with like a scenario where you have a question to ask. Should you have this system where I believe it is actually pretty balanced, as in these short maps that are harder are worth about the same as the long maps that are easier? This is a relatively balanced system, or I think most people can rationally agree this is a balanced system based on difficulty. Or would you rather either give like a flat length bonus, even more so than we have now, where just like the longer a map is, there's just a multiplier that slowly increases over time, where it buffs like pretty much every long map, or just nerf short maps like objectively even more. Let's say vibes based system based on how hype a score is by being longer, you know? So you have these two options. You either have the current system, which I think is pretty balanced, which is based on the sheer difficulty of the map and the sheer amount of skill that it requires to FC it, or you have a vibes-based system that is more based on the hypeness of each score rather than the mechanical skill required. So for example, I think under the current system, having, for example, Zetsubo Plantation, like 11-star map as the PP record makes sense. It is probably mechanically one of the most, if not the most impressive play in the game. I'd also argue something like Sidetrack Day being number 1 would be fair. These would be the very, very difficult maps. Although Sidetrack Day is kind of different because it's a longer map. I'd say, let's say you made a TV-sized version of Sidetrack Day, but it was just like the diff spikes. I feel like that, an FC on that should be like one of the PP records probably. Same for Zetsubo Plantation, same for Time to Say Goodbye, right? Do you want to have that, or do you want to have a better viewer experience, for example, where a lower SR map that is objectively easier, but it's longer, so it produces more hype along the play, it's more interesting to look at, is the PP record, right? So in this case, it would be like Save Me, or any length bonus abuse map, pretty much. Now, there is a wrench in the system to throw into all of this, which is that there are specific types of maps right now that are very, very underweighted because of the way length bonus works, which is maps that are consistently difficult. So for example, if you have like a 5-6 minute consistent, I'll make this all caps, difficulty map, this right now is underweighted because of the way that length bonus works. Essentially, if you have like a 5 to 6 minute map that has like the entire difficulty of the map is in like 20 to 30 seconds of a disc spike, and then the rest is like filler that is 1 to 2 stars lower than the entire disc spike, right? This is going to be worth pretty much the exact same value as something that is 5 to 6 minutes, but of consistent difficulty. That is like the disc spike, but throughout the entire map, pretty much. Blend S, this is a 6 minute long, very consistent difficulty map. There are a few like higher difficulty sections, but in general, the map is very straining. Almost the entire map is full of like 1/4 gaps. There's nearly not a single like gap longer than 1/4 in the entire map. It is very straining all throughout. Despite that, it's only worth 1.5k, and because of that, it's very underweighted. People don't know how garbage length bonus is. And in terms of vibes, people want length bonus to be broken. That's the thing, because you never hear complaints about, for example, rule being overweighted, despite the fact that it is far more overweighted than something like Time to Say Goodbye. Despite the fact that it's longer and nobody really plays it and nobody really farms it. This is way more overweighted because not only is it abusing a current skill set, which everybody pretty much agrees is overweighted, which is high BPM aim, but also it hard abuses length bonus to the point where it's way more PP than Time to Say Goodbye on like the same star rating pretty much. We just need an Einstein to make the perfect PP system with a mix of vibes and actual difficulty. Here's the thing, they're incompatible, in my opinion. It's not possible because if it's balanced, but people don't like the vibes of it because it causes people to play shorter maps, then you can't just nerf the shorter maps because then it's not balanced anymore, you know? You either follow the vibes or you follow balance. You can't have both. People don't like when people are RNG retry spamming, but the fact is, there's no way for the PP system to always account for that. If you want to nerf short maps to discourage people from retry spamming, you can do that, but it will be less balanced than like the current PP system is pretty much. So my question to the OSU community, what do you think? Do you think the PP system should be theoretically balanced based on difficulty, or should it be based more on vibes where the longer map, even if it's easy or easier, should be worth more just because it's more interesting to watch? I'm going to stick with the idea that despite its probably unpopularity with the community, it's healthier for the game to have a balanced PP system rather than having a vibes-based, length-based system, I think. And also, we should actually fix length bonus, please.